Hey there, I'm Philip Molina, and this is a breakdown of The Flash Season 2, Episode 6, Enter Zoom. And holy crap, was this a good episode. Let's get right into it. So we open on an intense fight scene between The Flash and Dr. Light, who is here to kill Flash because Zoom really doesn't feel like doing it himself for some reason. Dr. Light appears to succeed, but not really, and we jump back 72 hours earlier. Now, of course, we'll get back to that. We then find out that Barry was trying to work with Dr. Light to bring Zoom to him so he can just get all of this over with. And if you remember, this was the same idea that Earth 2 Flash, Jay Garrick, was like, yeah, I'm not helping you fight Zoom right now. You're gonna die. I don't want to help that. But of course they say people have to learn the hard way. And he so is going to. And then we see DOPPELWELLS flashback, but it's actually over to Earth 2. There we meet his lovely Earth 2 daughter, Jessie. Did you catch the reference he makes almost immediately?
That's my Jess, always so quick.
Yeah, it's a pretty on-the-nose revelation that this is the Flash show's version of Jessie Quick, another speedster that plays a bigger role in the DC universe. Anyway, this is definitely all before Jessie's got all that speed stuff going on. However, I do gotta say a lady speedster could tell a whole new story and make things really interesting. You know, cause then you start imagining all kinds of stuff that could happen with her and Barry, and I could wink right now, but I think it's pretty obvious without the wink. Then at the station, Patty and Joe discuss some details about finding Dr. Light, and listen to what Patty points out about light.
Did you know that light energy can be turned into hard light?
Patty.
No, and on the other end of the spectrum is invisibility.
Now the invisibility bit obviously foreshadows the scene to come, but the hard light bit, I think that might also be foreshadowing something huge, light that can actually have the impact of a physical object. Not only do I think that's a direct reference to the powers of Green Lantern, but anyone notice where we hear Linda's headed to?
She's staying out with some friends out in Coast City.
Coast City, home to Green Lantern. Now, of course, that's just Earth 1 Linda, and I'm not sure if she took Cisco's light gloves with her, but something's gonna come from that, I think. Now let's go ahead and start getting to the action of the episode. Cisco falls for a trick that you actually think Cisco might have been the only person who wouldn't have fallen for it. It has kind of been done in a lot of other movies and shows. It's where he thinks Dr. Light has escaped because her cell is empty and there's a pile of clothes, but of course he's wrong, and then we get that same, the camera is the invisible person style of attack that we saw back in Hollow Man, and then away she goes. One thing that I actually like about the pile of clothes though, means that Dr. Light's powers are more realistic than you'd think, because she can only apply them to her actual body. So often metahumans can do like all kinds of crazy stuff, but also it kind of magically works on their clothes too. So this not only sets up the use of her clothes later for the fake Dr. Light plan, but it also makes it feel a little bit more real that she would have to get naked for no one to see her. Anyway, then Cisco tries to grope DOPPELWELLS because his new powers let him see flashes of memories and other moments in time, and he's hoping it's gonna explain to him what DOPPELWELLS' real deal is. I love that they've turned vibe into a verb here, because then it allows for this hilariously awkward exchange.
What did you vibe about me? Nothing. What did you vibe about me? Nothing.
God, why? What's there to vibe on?
I don't care how many times they say it, vibe as a verb will always be a little sexual. I want you to vibe him. Ugh. We then get another multiverse flashback over to Earth 2 again, and we see some of the fun differences over here on Earth 2, by the way. You can see the cell phones are just like ours, except they've got terrible stabby things right where your ear goes. They also watch their TVs in freaking portrait mode, and like right there officially I think now Earth 2 is a terrible place. Are movie theaters also portrait? They're like in like skyscrapers? What is this? I hate it. Oh, also, did you notice they get their news from Channel 52? So Channel 52 News is a kind of news outlet that covered DC stories in the comics, and the 52 is a reference to lots of DC stuff. Most recently, the new 52, but also there are 52 versions of Earth in DC. Basically, 52 is just an important number to look out for, and in fact, did you see it a few minutes ago when Cisco was walking down that hallway? Boom! Clearly someone at DC is a huge fan of the B-52s. I'm sure more than a few of you noticed that on Earth 2, the news report revealed that Oliver Queen's dad, Robert, was the one that survived the Queen's Gambit disaster. Oliver was the one that died. And so Robert was the one that became the Hooded Vigilante and the Arrow. So what's really interesting about that is that we know in this DC TV world, they haven't really had any Batman stuff. And anytime they've wanted to use a Batman type story, they just switch it out to being Oliver and an Arrow story. Kind of like how the League of Assassins wants to destroy Oliver's hometown on Arrow, but they also wanted to do that to Gotham and Batman Batman Begins. But anyway, in the comics, one of my favorite storylines is a Flash one called Flashpoint. And that takes place in an alternate reality where Batman is not Bruce Wayne, but instead it's his father, Thomas Wayne, who has taken on the mantle of the Bat.
You're his father. You're Thomas Wayne.
So if we know that in this TV show world they use Arrow to tell Batman stories and Oliver's dad has become the Arrow and this parallel dimension is kind of like the alternate reality of Flashpoint, then I think all signs are pointing to us getting this Flashpoint story at some point. And it's a huge story. Like, it changes everything about the DC universe. I don't know when they'll do it, but I'm really excited to see how it'll affect all the DC shows. We then get a really fun training montage that Cisco sets up to basically teach Linda how to shoot only Barry in the face. I don't want to guess why Cisco has dozens of cardboard cutouts of all his friends or what he's done with them before this instance right now, but this was a really fun scene nonetheless, which also makes what happens later and how dark it gets so much more surprising. Okay, my one beef with this scene is that it's really obvious that all of Barry's family and friends are all here, hanging out with the Flash, and they're clearly all working with him regularly, and even though Barry isn't doing the face blurring thing or even much of the voice altering, we're supposed to believe that Linda has no idea that Barry is under the mask? I mean, this guy was her ex-boyfriend. Yeah, then I guess it's really obvious why they did not work out, because Linda has no memory of who Barry's friends are or even what he looks like, apparently. Now, a few moments later, Barry takes lead on planning the rest of the mission. Not that any of his friends seem too confident in his idea, but it is kind of cool seeing him take the lead since the show's always left most of the leadership to the brilliant scientist of the week. Okay, side note, we see Barry and Joe go into the Star Labs elevator, and holy crap, that's a lot of floors. Star Labs has to be freaking massive. That's like 28 floors. Guys, do you realize that you have this much space to work with? Like, let's spread out just beyond this one room, maybe. Each of you could have like 3 of your own floors, easily. When Flash visits Linda a moment later and her confidence is at its lowest, it is worth noting that the character that's having trouble accepting her role as a master of light is seen here sitting in almost complete darkness. Not bad, Flash team, I like it. Also, Barry reveals his identity to Linda, and while I get why he does anyone have a count on how many people know his secret identity now? Like, he can't still get mad when Felicity or somebody accidentally calls him Barry when he's in his Flash attire, because it wouldn't be crazy for them to assume that he has already told everyone in Central City. Okay, finally, the whole episode has built up to this moment, the moment that we saw at the opening, and it's this fake scene. It's a trap that Team Flash has built to catch Zoom. It's always hilarious when normal, decent actors have to play people who are terrible actors.
I'm here to kill you, Flash. So get ready to fry.
And I love that detail that the cheesy dialogue was written by Cisco. Anyway, the plan doesn't work out. A little later, Zoom does show up and he kidnaps Linda, and holy crap, everything from this moment on is terrifying. The episode completely changes tone and it suddenly feels like a horror movie. Zoom's voice is definitely a big part of that.
You like to fish with bait. I do too.
And you probably wouldn't be surprised to learn that we've heard it before in a horror movie. It's the freaking Candyman. And it's also the creepy guy from the Final Destination movies, scariest voice ever. Also, look at Zoom's body. There was a theory at one point that Zoom could be Earth 2's Barry Allen, but yeah, that is not likely. Unless Earth 2's Barry Allen is on like every steroid known to man. Flash shows up to save Linda, and when she gets tossed off the building, I can't help but be totally reminded of when Gwen Stacy is plummeting to her death and Spider-Man tries to save her, but then his actions still end up resulting in her dead. So I'm always super sensitive to these scenes where a superhero that doesn't fly has to save someone that is potentially falling to their death. And it's nice to see Barry wielding some of his new tricks to save her, by the way. The Flash character has always had like so many interesting ways that he can use his speed, but up against Zoom, none of these powers are of like any use at all. Check out this insane moment when Flash uses his recently acquired ability to shoot lightning, and not only does it not hit Zoom, Zoom fucking catches the lightning, like in his hand, and he throws it back at Flash. You know I have to dissect this moment. The Flash in all of DC Comics is actually one of the most powerful heroes out there. Because yeah, sure, there are some that are bigger and have other kinds of cool powers, but the speed that Flash is capable of can only be described as godlike. And the reason I say that is because Flash actually is somewhat based on the Greek god Hermes, who serves as the messenger for all of the Olympian gods. Compare Hermes' helmet to the Golden Age Flash helmet and you'll see the inspiration is pretty direct. But a few moments into this fight where Barry gets his ass completely handed to him, Zoom wants everyone to know their hero, the Flash,
Is no god.
how can he say that if we know that Flash is totally based on the powers of a Greek god? Well, that's because when it comes to the gods of Olympus, sure, Hermes technically counts as one, but again, he's the messenger of the gods. Do you remember who the ruler of the Greek gods is? Yeah, that's Zeus. You might have seen him before. When it comes to Greek gods, he is at the top of the food chain. And do you remember what power Zeus is most associated with? The ability to literally, in his very hands, hold and throw lightning. So this moment with Zoom holding the lightning bolt in his hand, that's proof right there that this isn't Flash versus Reverse Flash level of fighting. This is the mailman of the gods trying to fight the John Cena of the gods. Basically, it's not a fair fight. This is also made really clear in the way Zoom's speed is portrayed. Like, considering the time Flash caught a bullet or two maybe out of the air, that was given an entire slow motion sequence. But here, when Zoom catches countless bullets in his hands, it's so easy for him, they don't even dwell on it. And for those of you wondering why Zoom doesn't reveal Flash's identity to everybody, it's a lot more meaningful for the public to see their favorite hero utterly defeated. Remember, these people were recently like, let's have a Flash day. Let's name our coffee Flash. We love Flash. And now it's like seeing your dad get beat up in front of you, which is like the saddest image ever. But if he'd been unmasked, it would have been more like they just saw a poor kid who never really stood a chance in the first place. So poor Barry is dragged around like a pit bull, playing with a ragdoll, and I think this becomes that moment in every superhero show where the hero comes really close to death and you actually realize he's not invincible. The stakes of all these battles become much higher than we previously thought. It's happened to Arrow, it's happened to Daredevil, and it's just incredibly heartbreaking every time. The episode ends with Barry in the hospital in the worst shape we have ever seen him, and there's a huge revelation when we find out after this beating, he can't feel his legs. And if you're wondering what moment caused this, I would not be surprised if it was this part of the fight where I swear to God, it sounds like you can hear Barry's spine being ripped out. It's actually very reminiscent of when Bane broke the bat. God, these poor guys. At least they've got old Dr. Wells' wheelchair in a storage closet or something. Okay, so that was the story, and those last few minutes probably made it one of the best Flash episodes we've ever had. Okay, let's get to the title. Enter Zoom. At first read, the title seems pretty straightforward, right? But it's actually more clever than you'd think. This episode is about creating an extremely elaborate plan with decoys and a training montage, and even a literally scripted out fake scene. And this is where the title comes in. Often in the pages of a script, kind of like what CISCO maybe wrote for this Barry and Linda scene, you indicate the entrance of a character with the word enter, like Vader enters. Or when they're building it up even more, something like someone saying, okay, I get it, you're going out with a famous person, but they can't be that famous. You could write enter Pope Francis. It's a way to imply that a character of great importance is entering a scene and is about to change everything. So the title both applies to the fact that Zoom enters this cute little scene that they've scripted out as part of their trap, and then the other meaning is actually a little meta because it's also the case in this script for the overall Flash episode. Like, the writers wrote in all this planning and the silly montage, and then in the script for the episode, at this moment when Zoom is gonna come in and absolutely change everything, you better believe they wrote enter Zoom. Also, smaller thing to note about the title, this was the most badass villain we've ever seen on this show. He destroyed Barry worse than anything we've ever seen, terrified me, and I know that he's a fictional character, and yet this was just enter Zoom. Like, we're just getting started with him. Holy shit, this guy's gonna be insane. But here are my lingering thoughts and some other observations I had. The previews made it look like Dr. Light is the biggest dummy. She just like runs into a metal pole. Oh, and also if you're wondering where Earth 2 Dr. Light Linda is, they don't tell us. So as far as we know, she is still walking around Central City butt naked. It's also fun to remember that Linda Park isn't the original Dr. Light Linda's TV show, and I don't just mean the fact that they recast the part from the reporter that showed up in the pilot. I mean that CISCO and Caitlin actually referenced an old employee named Dr. Light that made a gun that CISCO uses against Deathstroke back when we first met these people on Arrow.
His equipment belonged to Arthur Light. Wells fired him 2 years ago.
Why?
Because he was a psycho.
So this is Dr. Light too. Also, it was pretty unclear if the speed dampener had any effect on Zoom. But if it didn't, I think that's a hint that, like in the comics, Zoom isn't actually a speedster. His powers work in a completely different, kind of mindfuck of a way. But we'll see if they do that. Oh, and after lying about his blindness before, I wonder how Barry's gonna explain to Patty why he's paralyzed from the waist down. He can't say he got his legs dilated. Also, anybody else wondering how they're gonna change Barry's voiceover next episode, considering his current condition? My name is Barry Allen, and I've got the fastest wheelchair around. By the way, we can joke about this because Arrow already showed us in that flash forward that Barry's gonna be fine. All right, some questions for you guys. One, do we think Earth 1's Oliver Queen is gonna meet Earth 2's Robert Queen? And are we gonna have like a father-son double Arrow team up? Which, by the way, is definitely a pitch for an Arrow TV movie. I want credit on that. I'm getting distracted. The question is, do you think it's gonna happen? An Oliver Queen, Robert Queen team up? Also, question 2, I'm really loving the cross-dimensional Earth 2 flashbacks, and it reminds me of how major portions of Arrow episodes are told through flashback as well. So how would you guys feel if those became a regular part of the Flash episodes for a while? What do you think? Finally, question 3, do you think our Barry is going to travel to Earth 2? And if so, is he gonna meet Doppelberry? I would love that, because then maybe he'd have to work with him, kind of like how Olivia did on Fringe. But do you think that's gonna happen? All right, so that's it for this in-depth analysis of Flash Season 2, Episode 6, Enter Zoom. And between you and me, we're trying really hard to get these videos out to you quickly without having to sacrifice too much of the analysis, so bear with me if I'm a little late sometimes. Thank you. And it would really help us out a lot if you spread the word that we're doing these, because I really like doing them, and I would love for other fans of the shows to join us on this super nerdy conversation. So share this video with your friends if you liked it. Also check out my Walking Dead analysis video if you watch that show. It has some really good examinations of gory blood imagery, but check that out. I'm Philip Molina. Hit me up on Twitter at Fimo and follow at New Rockstars to find out when our videos are posting and what else we have going on. I will see you in an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. video or an Arrow video or a Walking Dead video or all of the videos on the internet. This has been fun. Bye.